Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining me. I am so excited to chat about Pinterest today. I can see some familiar faces in the audience, so thanks so much for coming by. As you will hear, I am a huge Pinterest fan. I literally, anyone who knows me in real life knows, I literally walk around with Pinterest merch, my bag is Pinterest. I'm a big fan, and hopefully I can pass on some of that joy and love to you today and some wisdom to take into your businesses. So if you haven't met me before, I am Rachel. I'm a creative consultant. Basically what that means is I really am super passionate about helping small businesses with their content strategy and also just finding more joy and fun in the whole process. Because I know, especially at the moment, content can feel a little bit of a struggle sometimes. It feels like one of those jobs that you kind of have to do, but it doesn't always feel fun and it doesn't always feel like it's working the best for you all the time. So for me, I really want people to feel like their content is working for them and they can also have a little bit more fun with it in the process. And a huge part of that is Pinterest for me. I absolutely love Pinterest as a marketing platform. So that's obviously what we're going to chat through today. So what I want to start with is my Pinterest love story. So I have been on Pinterest as a user kind of since the start, really, since it was so small that you had to be let in with an invitation. And like lots of other people who use it for personal use, I was using it for shopping. I was using it to plan my next outfit, to plan my home decor, any events I was doing, weddings, that kind of thing. It was really like an inspiration board for myself, which is how lots of people use it, for personal use. And actually, I'd really love to know, just with a show of hands, who's using Pinterest for personal use? Is it quite a lot of people? Yeah. And how about business use? Okay, so still a fair few. Amazing. Because I think actually a lot of people I chat to are using it for personal use, but they're not necessarily using it for business. Or maybe they are using it for business, but they're kind of a bit like, am I using it in the best way? I don't know. So hopefully some of these tips are going to help you really maximize that. So after a few years of making boards like this, I always use this example, my Q2 McBooty board. I was literally pinning things I liked, so cute animals with stupid board titles that weren't doing anything for me as a business. After a few years of doing this, I really started to realize that I can use Pinterest to grow my business. So for a little bit context for you, I was running a wedding brand at this time. So I was working with couples to plan their weddings and plan their wedding decor, their stationery, and Pinterest and weddings go together really well. So I realized that I could be using Pinterest as a marketing tool. And then after a little bit of effort with that, a few things happened. So firstly, my website traffic grew by 2,500%. So I was also actually selling on Etsy at the time as well. So I had a couple of sales channels. My website was kind of just had a little trickle of traffic from Instagram, other social media platforms. But when I started using Pinterest, that's when it really became my main sales channel. So I went from less than 2,000 monthly views on Pinterest to a peak of 1.5 million. I also tripled my revenue through my website, which again made it my main sales platform. And I also, one of the most kind of relevant things really for me was I started noticing that I was attracting the clients that I really wanted to work with. So I was attracting the couples for me where I was like, oh, these people get me. These are the people I really want to work with. And that was really noticeable for me. And I also had a few press opportunities and some fun collaborations. I was actually invited to speak by the Pinterest UK team about my Pinterest love story. And the reason why I mention these other opportunities is because sometimes I think we only think about what platforms can do for our sales, but also we want to think about the brand awareness and the other opportunities that can come from that as well. Just seeing if I had this round the wrong way. No, I didn't. So this quote is something that I really, really love to start with Pinterest. There's a few things that are really good to know about the context of the platform and why people are there. Like, if we can work out why people are on Pinterest, then we can market to them in a more successful way. So this is a quote from Pinterest. Literally, whenever they do any of their webinars or any of their sort of tutorials, I'm literally in the front row with my notebook, like taking notes. And this is one of the things they say. So Pinterest is the place where people come to get inspired for life's meaningful moments. So this is really, really key on Pinterest. It's a place of inspiration, and it's where people go to plan. So something else that's really, really interesting about Pinterest as a platform is they describe themselves as an online oasis. So what that means is basically they want their audience to feel inspired, they want them to feel positive, they want them to feel like they've come to a place that accepts them and where they can really plan their ideal life. And as an atmosphere on a platform, that's really, really great for sales because people are in an action-taking frame of mind. So they are there planning their ideal life, they're in a positive mindset, and they're really like focused on themselves and what they want out of it's almost like their vision board, isn't it? So that's the kind of context that we're working in on Pinterest. Another thing that Pinterest say, this is another one of their quotes, is create to inspire. So that's one of their biggest goals for their creators and their users. They want you to create content that inspires. So as we've kind of mentioned, when people are on Pinterest, they are future focused. So they're in planning mode. They are looking for inspiration for something in their future. So the key with our Pinterest marketing is reaching people when they are in that planning phase and giving them that inspiration at the exact time that they are looking for it. So if we can do that with our content, we're going to be on to a winner. Another analogy that I have about Pinterest to really sort of slot ourselves into this context is if you imagine a party. If you were having a party or you just had a party, say, and you were sharing images of that party, you might share them to Instagram, Facebook, maybe TikTok. These are the sort of more immediate places where you're sharing like the party as it's happening or just after it's happening. And people are kind of looking in to that. But on Pinterest, that's where people go to plan the party. So that's why we're reaching them at that exact right time. Hello. Oh. There we go. So some stats for you. 400 monthly active users on the platform. Huge, huge platform. I also like to say at the moment it's going through a real renaissance. Like, it really is growing at the moment. More and more people are joining the platform. 85% of pinners have bought something based on pins they've seen, so it very much is a shopping place as well. And one of my favorite stats, if you can collect favorite stats, that is the kind of thing I collect, 97% of the top searches on Pinterest are non-branded. So the important thing about that is what it tells us is people are looking for something in particular, but they're not necessarily looking for a brand in particular. They're looking for the thing, not the brand. So that's what makes it a really amazing place to find new people for your audience, because they're looking for what you offer, but they don't know that you offer it yet. So that's super important, and that also tells us that we need to bear that in mind with our content, because you are introducing yourself to new eyes. So you want to give them, an incentive to get to know you. Oh. So another big part of that is that Pinterest is a search engine. You might have heard this before. It is big news on Pinterest. It is a search engine. It is also so much more than a search engine. But what this means is basically we can reach so many more people than just the people who are following us. So that's one thing. But it's also a place where we can grow a presence for our brand as well. That's something that's changed in the last few years. People have always been able to follow you on Pinterest, but they've added in lots of features that I'm going to talk about in a minute that help you grow that presence so that you can nurture an audience and introduce yourself to a new audience at the same time. So, how do we do this? Let's get into the sort of strategy now. If we start with your boards, so if you're on Pinterest already, for personal use or business, you'll know that you have pins and you have boards. So your boards, lots of people overthink boards, to be honest. They really are as simple as the filing cabinet for your ideas. So they are there to categorize your pins, and basically it's just there to set out the main topics that you want to talk about as a business. So with your products, what categories do your products fall into? And this can be things like, the actual categories of your products, but it can also be who those products are for, what kind of gifts do they make, that kind of thing. Categorizing your work, that's what your boards are doing. And one of the things that's really great, actually, about boards on Pinterest is you don't have to overthink them because people don't really spend that much time scrolling through your profile. Like, if you think about how you use Pinterest as a user, if you do use it, most of the time you're looking on search, you're scrolling through your home feed, you're not really spending loads of time reading through every single board, like a book. So this kind of takes the pressure off you with your boards. But one thing that is really, really good to do is use some keywords in your board titles. Now, wherever you use words on Pinterest, because as we said, it is a search engine, you want to be using a nice mix of keywords that are relevant to your business, because that's going to help you get found by those people who don't know you yet, but they're looking for what you offer. So really, your boards, they're the filing cabinet for your ideas, and they also set up, sometimes I call it like an SEO skeleton. It's basically like the foundation of your keywords for your account. So that's really where you want to start. You want to just lay out some boards that are going to be relevant to your business. We're getting onto pins next, when it goes. Gonna have a sip of water while you're doing it. So, with your pins, we've got a few different types of pins. We've got your organic pin types, which is what I'm going to talk about today. We also have things like Pinterest shopping and Pinterest ads. But really, for me, I'm all about the organic strategy, which is basically the marketing you can do on Pinterest for free. So your two main organic pin types are your static pins and your idea pins. So your static pins, they're basically probably the pins that you're most used to seeing. So they are your static images. They're basically the oldest pin type. They've been around forever. And the stuff that works really, really well for these are product images, if you have a blog, promoting blog posts, infographics, lifestyle images, that sort of thing. Really, these are like the backbone of Pinterest. And I also call these the traffic drivers because they include an outbound link for wherever you want to send them to. So your website, your sales channel, that's where you're sending people to from your static pins. Then we have idea pins, which, if you haven't heard of them before, they are relatively new in the last couple of years. They are the presence builders. So as I mentioned before, Pinterest have brought in these new features which help you to grow a presence on the platform. Really, idea pins are the new toy that is allowing you to do this. And they are really, really fun. They are well worth playing with. And the main difference with these is they are multiple pages. I usually like to say they're kind of a mix of an Instagram carousel post and like Reels and TikTok because they're vertical format, they're great for video content, and mainly because they have these multiple pages, they're great for actionable content, stuff that has a beginning, middle, and end, and basically anything that's sort of episodic that you can take people through. They're like a really brilliant tool to help nurture your audience on the platform because basically you can go into a bit more detail, you can provide a little bit more value for for people, and you can just basically put more information in the pin itself. So that's really what idea pins are for. And I'm going to go on to a few sort of best practices really for the next pin types. But one thing I wanted to mention first is this concept of being a creator, not a curator. This is something that is relatively new in the last few years when it comes to pins. And basically, what it means is that the success that we're going to get from our pins on Pinterest is going to come from the pins we create ourselves rather than the pins that we're saving from other people. So strategy from a few years ago used to be you would pin loads of pins or repin or save, basically all of those terms kind of mean the same thing. You would save those pins from other people and it's like relevant content and it would basically fill your account with pins and that would power a lot of your strategy. But these days, Pinterest are more interested in your own fresh, original content. So we actually don't have to save anything from anyone else at all if we don't want to. If you want to, you can. But the main reason I bring this up is because lots of people tend to think that saving hundreds of pins from other people is going to power your whole strategy. But really, that's sort of a bit of an outdated approach to Pinterest now. And you want to really focus on your own original content. You want to focus on being creative, being innovative, and sharing your work. That's really what is going to give you success on the platform. So let's talk about some of the best practices for our organic pin types. So firstly, making the most of static pins as a product business. You might have heard this about pins. This is like really, really classic Pinterest advice, but vertical or portrait images are always going to do better on the platform if you can. Obviously, you know, pinning anything is better than nothing, but if you can make your images portrait or vertical, same thing, that's really going to do you a lot of good on the platform. Here's a couple of examples here from one of my friends and my clients. She's called Melody. She has a business called A Softer Edge, and she is really worth following on Pinterest. She really absolutely smashes it and does some really great content. And you can see here how it's not just sharing the images. You can share your images without anything on them. Absolutely fine. It's a great place to experiment with different pin formats. But something that's really useful to try is to try putting a bit of copy on your images, because what it does is it basically gives people an incentive to click on the image. So when people see an image and that it doesn't have any context on it, remember how earlier I was saying people don't really spend that much time on your profile. People are mainly, seeing your images in the context of everyone else's pins, so they don't really know what they're looking at when they're looking at it. But if we give them, a little bit of sales copy, a call to action, or even just something that's trend-based, like al fresco aesthetic, that was a huge trend on Pinterest a couple of months ago. Using that kind of, incentive and copy on the pins itself can really help with your engagement and getting people to actually click on your pins and taking action on them, rather than just thinking that's a really pretty image, I love it, maybe I'll save it, maybe it'll form part of my inspiration, but I'm not going to take any action on it. So trying a bit of copy on your actual pins can really help. And another big thing, and I think this is big on all platforms really, but particularly on Pinterest, have a think about how you can help the viewer imagine your product in their life. How are they going to make your product part of their vision board? Because remember, that's what people are doing on Pinterest, right? They are there to basically make the vision board of their future life. So how do you do that with your product images? You show them in use. You have really, really high quality images and maybe video as well that shows different ways to use your product, that kind of thing. I'm going to touch on that a little bit more in a second. But think about how you can help the viewer imagine themselves with your product in their life. That's going to do a lot of good. And finally, the bit more sort of tech, slightly boring bit is to remember your keywords. Always remember, wherever you're putting text, your pin titles, your pin descriptions, as well as your board titles, that's going to help you be found in search. So think like a searcher. Don't include, if you've got what I see product-based businesses do quite a lot is they have, names for their products that don't really describe what the product is. Even though the names are like really cool, people aren't necessarily going to type in a name that's not what the product is. So think about what someone might type into the search bar. That's a good rule of thumb. Think like a searcher. Use those words in your titles and descriptions. That's going to do you loads and loads of good. So on to idea pins. There's a few ways to make the most of these as a product-based business. Now, one of the things that I should mention about idea pins is at the moment, they don't include an outbound link. So the main difference with that is we want to be using a call to action in your idea pin to get people to take a next step with you. But I think sometimes what happens is because they don't at the moment include that outbound link, sometimes we leave them on the table because we think like, oh, why would I want to use them if I can't link to my product? But they are so worth using because in one of the most recent studies or one of the most recent Pinterest webinars, they actually shared that idea pins are performing and converting, like they're the most highest converting place or like surface or platform on Pinterest at the moment. So they're well worth using. And I think it's because you can use them to give more detail about your product. You can show it in use. You can use video. You can really include more detail that helps people make the decision to buy. So just because it doesn't have that link doesn't mean that they don't convert. So it's well worth using them. Again, you can see that, so this example is from another one of my clients. This is Ria from Confetti Sweethearts. She's a wedding brand, and she is absolutely brilliant with idea pins. This is a really good example of how to style one of her products, which is like napkin wraps that are personalized. And this idea pin basically goes through different ways to style them. So it's giving inspiration, but it's also showing the product in use. So it's helping people imagine the product in their life, in their wedding. So actionable content, as I said, works really, really well here. Anything that has a beginning, middle, and end. I've got some more examples in a second of the kind of stuff that works really well for product brands. So that's what we want to be thinking about, like really giving some of that detail. They don't have to be super complicated. They don't have to be, novels. But if we can give a little bit of value away for people, then it's really, really going to help us sell our work. What's next? There we go. So as promised, some more examples. Again, you can use these across static pins if you want, but I think some of these ideas work particularly well for idea pins. So for product-based businesses, I see gift guides do really, really well. You can do this with, a variation of your own products. You could also team up with some other brands if you want to. Like if you've got some of your biz besties, you can team up and make a gift guide. You could make a gift guide for like almost every type of customer you have, like if you do gifts for teachers or gifts for sisters, all that kind of thing. Gift guides work really well, especially at this time of year. It's definitely not too early to be pinning gift guides. Also, as I've mentioned, how to use your product. You really can't do too many of these. Like show people your product in use, show people how to style it, show people a collection tour, literally like show people a collection of your products that go together, how to style your product, the story behind your brand, the story behind your product. All of that, like behind the scenes making stuff, all of that works really well on idea pins as well. And one of my favorite tips is to recycle your video content that you already have. So if you've been doing Reels, if you've been doing TikToks, use that content on your idea pins. You can literally copy it, stick it on Pinterest, and you're getting loads more eyes on the work that you've already done. And one of the great things about Pinterest, actually, is that they are evergreen. So you're getting eyes on them for years to come, potentially. So let's go back. There we go. Remember, people are going to Pinterest to dream and plan their ideal life. So again, how can you make your product part of that picture? How can you help people imagine themselves buying what you have, imagine themselves with your product? Like, how can you form part of their vision board? If you can take that away and put some of that energy into your content, you're going to go really, really far on Pinterest. So thank you so much for listening. There's a few ways you can find me online. I am basically Rachel Emma Waring everywhere. That's my website. That's me on Pinterest, Instagram, TikTok. I've got loads of examples on my Pinterest account, actually, especially of idea pins. Obviously, I'm a service-based business now, but you can see how I use calls to action, how I use that beginning, middle, end. Like, feel free to go and have a look at that. And I also have a free workshop coming up next week on the 21st. It's actually not about Pinterest. It's about the visuals in your brand, because that's another thing I'm really, really passionate about chatting about. And I also work one-to-one with clients, both on their content strategy and their Pinterest strategy. So that's me. And I'm not going to throw it out to questions now, but I will stick around for a little bit. So if anyone has any questions, please feel free to come and chat to me. As you can tell, I love chatting about Pinterest literally all day long. So I'm here if you want to chat. But yeah, thank you so much for listening. Thanks for staying all the way through. Thank you.